Welcome to the Human Flourishing Project. I'm your host, Alex Epstein. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about tracking mental metrics. Now, a bit of housekeeping. I mentioned on the last episode that I was going to start doing the show every 2 weeks. I'll sometimes do it every week, but my new commitment is every 2 weeks, just because I find that that's the rhythm on which I always have something that I want to say, and it always integrates well with the rest of my projects. And then sometimes I'll do it every week, but I just wanted to reset people's expectations to every 2 weeks. And what this means is that this is the last episode, almost certainly, I might do one next week, but almost certainly the last episode of the first year of the program, because the first episode ever came out on August 2nd, 2018, and I recorded it on August 1st, which happened to be my 38th birthday, and today I'm recording it on July 25th, and you'll probably get it on July 26th, Friday, July 26th. So yeah, this is the last episode. We've done at least well over 30 episodes. And for the last episode of the year, I thought I'd share something that I'm pretty sure I've made mention of and I sometimes get asked about, but I don't think I've ever gone through it in detail. And it's an exercise that I've found a lot of value in for the 2 years that I've been doing it. And it's something that originated on my birthday 2 years ago. So I was thinking as I approach being 39 that I would share this. So I'm calling this mental metrics, and I'll tell you how I came up with this, tracking mental metrics. So I was about to turn 37, so that meant it was 2017, and I decided to take a walk in the redwoods in the Bay Area where I was living at the time. And so I took a walk for a couple hours, and I just had a notebook with me, and in that notebook I just wrote, I was walking around reflecting on my year, and in particular, I was reflecting on things that I was really happy that I spent my time on, and then things that I was not very happy that I spent my time on. So I had a lot of each, and I don't know where I came up with the rest of this, but that in and of itself was a very good exercise, and I've started doing that for this year in preparation for being 39, and it's something you might want to try as well, just walking around and thinking about and writing down what are the ways I used my time that I'm really happy with, and then what are the ways I used my time that I'm not really happy with. You can do it other ways too. Sometimes I'll do it as what I call a positive focus, thinking about my victories for last year and then also thinking about disappointments. But I tend toward focusing on just what I'm glad I spent my time on and what I'm not glad, because that really looks at things it has a very strong enjoyment and satisfaction perspective to it. And what I sometimes worry about if I just look at achievements is, well, I could have achieved certain things, but did I really enjoy the process of it? And if I didn't enjoy the process, then I'm suspicious of it, even if in some sense it's an achievement. Now, there are exceptions to that, but I think for various reasons it can be good to think about how am I glad I spent my time and how am I glad I didn't spend my time. And then what I did was I was thinking about, okay, how can I, in the next year, what can I do to make my use of time better in the next year? So I was thinking about that, because you can do things like make a resolution, and that can help in different ways. You can say, yeah, I'm going to do less of this, I'm going to do more of this. But it occurred to me that one thing that would have helped a lot is if I could track, if there's something that I could track. And I think the way this actually came up was I thought, what were the different positive and negative mindsets that I had? What was I doing with my mind well that led me to the good decisions, and then what was I doing with my mind badly that led to the bad decisions? And I started thinking of, okay, if I could identify some of these fundamentals, and they're not really universal fundamentals, they are more like they're personal fundamentals, and it's not even what are the fundamental things in my life that lead me to success or that don't lead me to success. It's more what are things that are fundamental to how. I'm not sure the best way to put this, but it's what do I see as making the biggest difference right now? So it could be, say, I think of myself as, well, I try to practice intellectual honesty, and that's a really good habit that I've had for a long time. And so that leads me to that has a lot of benefits, but I don't feel like that's something I really need to focus on right now. It's quite ingrained, where there are other things where I feel like, yeah, if I focused on this more, it would be good. But there's a real chance I'll focus on it less. So I started thinking about, okay, what caused what caused good things and what caused bad things. And then I thought, well, what could I track in terms of my mindset or my mind? What could I track on a daily basis that would steer me in the right direction and steer me away from the wrong direction? So I'll give you one, I'll share all of them with you. And some of them I came up with at the time, and some of them have emerged subsequently. But the first one on my list is, and I have a sheet that I try to do every day. And recently I've gotten very good again at doing it, and I really like it. And it's intentionality. So intentionality is I'm acting with a clear intention that I have thought through, that I've really thought through. So I have a clear intention in mind, and then I've thought through the intention. And when I was looking at the year before my 37th birthday, what I saw was I spent a lot of time on different kinds of projects where it wasn't very well thought through. And I thought, what, if on a day-to-day basis someone were asking me, hey, Alex, how intentional are you being today versus, say, being reactive? I thought, well, I'll bet I would have caught myself. And that I could have avoided really a lot of wasted time, or at least underutilized time, or misutilized, inadequately used time, I'll say. Because what I found was when I lacked intentionality, I could easily just get drawn into something. So it might be, well, I agreed to a certain meeting, or even I might have agreed to go to an event for a few days that didn't make any sense, or I agreed to take on a certain project, but I wasn't really clear, why am I doing this, and is this really beneficial? And those things just added up. So I thought, if I track intentionality, that'll be good. And what I found was when I started tracking it, I would often I'd give it myself on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is an interesting thing to rank because you don't have any kind of outside numerical things. But I just thought, okay, well, it's not going to be perfect, but I'll have a sense of, did I feel incredibly intentional, like a 10, which I would almost never give myself a 10, or did I feel like, it's pretty mediocre, like a 5? And I found with this and some of the other mental metrics, I was at a 5, and then over time, my more baseline would be at a 7. Now, these aren't grades in some sort of sense of I need to be at 10, but it's more, if I'm at 7, generally my life is at least pretty good and on track, and then 8, 9 is really, really good. But if I see 5, that shows there's something really off. So I'll share the other ones, and the point is not at all that you should have these. You certainly shouldn't have the same ones that I have, but maybe hearing mine will help you formulate your own. So I just have a spreadsheet, and it has, on the leftmost column, it has the date, and the dates just keep moving forward. And then I have intentionality as my first column after the date. And then the next one, which should be familiar to people who listen to this show, is altitude. So this is how high level a perspective do I feel like I have on my life. And when I'm doing this, it's good to do it at more or less the same time every day. So I do it sometime around the middle of the day. It's really, I'm trying to do it by how am I experiencing it right now. So I don't try to summarize too much. You just try to make sure you're taking a consistent time interval. So with some of these, I might look at it over the day. But it's often like, how good a job in this moment do I feel like I'm doing? And so altitude, it's like, what kind of perspective do I have? Then another one, the next one is C zone. So C zone is an idea from Strategic Coach, which I mention a lot on this show. And C zone is, Dan Sullivan he classifies work into 3 categories, A, B, and C. And A is something like irritating, and then B is kind of okay, and then C is fascinating and motivating. So C zone I think of as how much am I doing work that's fascinating and motivating? And I would notice early on that I might be a 5 on this. And what I found is when I noticed that I was a 5, even if that's all I didn't do any analysis, it just gave me a little bit of a push into, okay, you want to figure out how to do more of this. And part of what's beneficial about this sheet that I have and tracking these mental metrics is that it doesn't take very long. It probably takes 3 minutes a day or 4 minutes a day to do. And it's not claiming to be some panacea where everything is going to be fixed, but it's very orienting. It's kind of like standing on a scale every day. Standing on a scale every day for eating purposes and for weight management purposes, I think is really underrated, because it's actually, you can point out to all sorts of issues you can have with it, but there's just something about, if I stand on the scale every day, it gives me some objectivity about where I am. And then if I ever start deviating, so let's say my baseline is 185 pounds and maybe I'd like to be a little bit less, but if I start going toward 190 or even higher, then being on the scale I'll catch it, and I'll think of my eating in a different way. It's much harder to go off track. In fact, this is really interesting, I don't ever remember going significantly off track when I'm looking at the scale on a daily basis. But sometimes I'll think, well, yeah, I don't need to look at the scale. And then as soon as that starts happening, then that's when I could gain a decent amount of weight and not really be aware of it. So what I find is that there's a very parallel thing to just measurement and course correction in these mental areas, which then they capture something just about what I'm doing in terms of my actions. My next category is team building. And this is something where it's sometimes a struggle for me, which is just, am I building a team that I feel like is really good and that supports me? And that can be something like hiring new people, but also can be, how well is my team doing? How well am I interacting with them? How well am I helping them become better? How well am I seeking out better people? That might be consultants that I'm working with. And so I found that tracking that was really good. The next one is conditions. I like this one a lot. I'm a big fan of setting up conditions in my life, because if I can set something up as a condition, it makes it much easier. So you've probably heard the idea that if you have only healthy food in the house and it's prepared, it's a lot easier to eat healthier. And I find I was just on not a vacation, but I was just giving a speech, and I didn't have the conditions properly set up for eating on the road, which I usually do. And it's just amazing how big a difference that makes. Whereas I get back home and it's just, okay, the default is I have my meal that's prepared by my assistant. I have multiple of them. And so the easiest thing to do is to eat that meal. And then just when I'm home for several days, it's just my energy is much better and everything is much better. So conditions. And so I'm just thinking about, for this particular day, did I set up the conditions for success? And that might mean, how much did I sleep? Did I prepare yesterday? So did I have a clear idea of what I'm going to do, or am I trying to figure that out in the morning, which I've talked about on this show? I don't like figuring out what I'm going to do and then executing it the same day. I usually get lost in procrastinating and deliberating too long and being conflicted about what I'm going to do if I do it in the morning. So just anything where I feel like I really engineered the conditions well for my day, or I didn't. And then there could also be, and these are not, maybe I should make them more exact, but sometimes I'm also thinking about just the conditions in my life in general. But I really do think of it as the specific day-to-day ones that I have in mind as good. Am I handling those well? Another one is confidence. That's my next one. So confidence is, and that has a real feel to it. Just how confident do I feel about my life in general? And that's a really good one to track. And it can be really interesting to think about what causes these. And if you want to think about what causes them, go to town. But I would just say maybe that can be an optional thing, but even just tracking it is good for course correction. So what can happen with this kind of thing is people can feel like, well, I have to track all of these things, and then I have to have really good explanations for why they are the way they are, and then I have to have a plan of action for changing them. And then that can often just take too much time and be too intrusive, and then you won't do at all even the tracking. Whereas if you can just track the mental metrics, then the other stuff can be bonus, but that'll be a really good baseline. My next one is creative connection. And so this is somewhat related to team building, but this is in particular with the creative work that I really like to do. Do I feel like I'm connected to other people who are helping me with it? So it might be if I'm working on a book, like, do I feel like I have a strong connection with really smart people who are helping me with the book? So that's another one. My next one is creative learning. So how well do how much am I being stimulated? How much am I really learning, advancing my thinking in, at a given time? And this is one I pay a lot of attention to. The next one, interestingly, is flourishing. And this is a tricky one because flourishing is really an integration of a lot of things. But I still this is a pretty vague one, but I just still have the idea, okay, how much do you feel like you're flourishing? 1 to 10. And I find that it often ends up being very similar to confidence, which is interesting. But so I still find it useful to track. The next one is social ambition. So social ambition is how ambitious do I feel in terms of other people in my personal life, in terms of am I seeking out people that I'm really interested in and enjoy being around, and am I really making the most of my friends? And part of what I thought with that is, hey, when I looked at my life, I was thinking, yeah, there were some really enjoyable times with people, but I could have more of these if I had more social ambition. I could also have less of the boring times if I had more social ambition. The next one, which is one I really like to track, is energy. So just how energized do I feel? The next one is romantic rejuvenation, which is how rejuvenated do I feel in my romantic life? And all of these are just specific to me, but I like in particular the idea of thinking about how rejuvenating is this too, because that's an aspect of romantic relationships that can be really rewarding, but it's really important to track that. I think other people would track all kinds of other things and they can do that, but that's one I particularly like. One that I added later, which is probably very specific to me, is mental continuity. And that is really in the things that I want to be thinking about, and a lot of that is creative stuff. How much do I feel like I have continuity day to day? And with the continuity, I find important in the sense that I don't like thinking about something intensely for a couple days and then dropping it for a week and then resuming, because I find that there's something about having it always on my mind at a certain level where I can really make progress, and I'll often have a lot of insight when I'm not even planning to work on something, but I do like that day to day. And there's this idea about Jerry Seinfeld, which I don't know if it's true because he's denied it, but I think he still might have said it and forgotten about it. But there's this idea that he had a calendar and all he did was he would put an X on every day on the year calendar when he did, if he worked on his stand-up. It was probably working on his writing. And then he just saw how many X's in a row he could get. And there was allegedly something very empowering about this, and he would just get months and months of X's, and that would really add up. And there is something to that, and so that's part of what I'm trying to capture in mental continuity. And then the last one that I have, and then there are a couple of other columns, but the last mental metric I'm tracking is serenity. And this is not exactly the same as any of the others, but yeah, how serene do I feel? And you might think of contentment as similar to this, but that's just an aspect where I like thinking, yeah, do I feel really at peace and happy in a very kind of relaxed way about different things in my life? So those are the mental metrics that I happen to track. I may change them considerably this year. Now that I'm doing this show, I want to think about them, and are there any that I want to add? but just to repeat them, it's intentionality, altitude, C-zone, team building, conditions, confidence, creative connection, creative learning, flourishing, social ambition, energy, romantic rejuvenation, mental continuity, and serenity. Now, I mentioned that I think it can be a hazard to spend too much time analyzing it, but I do have 2 additional columns that are sort of for analysis and planning, and I just have the next. So one column is just notes on causes, and that just means whatever strikes me as noteworthy about what caused good or bad metrics today, I just write. And so it'll just, so one that I was noticing a few weeks ago is the way my meals were being prepared. The meals with salmon were making me feel heavy, at least with the salmon, the way it was prepared. It was purchased pre-cooked at the grocery store, and I was just feeling heavy, and I was noticing my energy was going down, and that was a very big deal. And so I just know, like, I'm looking at it and I see salmon is heavy again, heavy eating 2 meals. So there's just a series of 3 or 4 days where I was feeling too heavy because of my eating, and then just that having that feeling and my energy was down, and I could just see, yeah, there's something about this food. And that's the kind of thing where maybe I could have caught it even sooner, but then I started having my assistant stop preparing the meals with that kind of salmon, and then that issue went away. So it's just something where this course correction, that was the most salient thing, and then that led to other things. And then the other column, so I have notes on causes, and then I have 1 sentence action tomorrow. And that's just an idea of what do I want to think about tomorrow or try to do tomorrow. And it might be related to the cause, or it might just be something else, but just one idea. So when I fill this out, it really takes 4 minutes, maybe even 3 minutes. And it's fast, but it's a good kind of course correction. So you might want to try this in terms of identifying your own mental metrics and tracking those. Now, as I was reviewing this and thinking about today's show, I thought, well, are there other kinds of metrics I would like to track? Because I mentioned tracking weight on a scale, and I thought that was interesting. And so it's led me to start thinking about, well, what if I tracked things like minutes in the ocean or time training jiu-jitsu? And the rationale here, I haven't tested this yet, but this is the rationale so far, is that there are certain things that within limits I want to be doing more of, not less. And there, for various reasons, they might get short shrift. So sometimes the ocean will get short shrift because I won't quite fit it in. So I usually fit it in once a day, but maybe I'd want to fit it in twice a day, or maybe I'd want to fit it in a little bit longer. And so I just thought, well, if I tracked minutes in the ocean a day, even if I spent 30 minutes in the ocean a day, I probably wouldn't regret that. I would feel really good and refreshed and relaxed. And so that would be an interesting kind of thing. Similar with jiu-jitsu, I used to spend too much time on jiu-jitsu. Now I do it only in small chunks, so I'm a little bit of a holding pattern, but I at least continue to do it. But it might be, well, in general right now, more is better for that. Now it's tricky because there's not some sort of absolute optimization where the more the better, but I'm thinking of things where, I tend to do this less than I think would be beneficial, and then things I tend to do more. And then you could think of, what do I tend to do much? I mean, you could think of just easy ones for most people might be, number of times a day checking Facebook, or number of times a day checking email, or texting time. So that I think there's something there. The key for me will be, can I part of the way I decide these metrics is using them going to be really useful, and are they pretty easy to use? Because I don't want to have something where the tracking itself is just incredibly burdensome. And the one nice thing about the mental metrics is I don't have to spend any effort tracking them. I just have an idea of them off the top of my head, and then just tracking them automatically course corrects me and helps me make better decisions, but with just a few minutes a day. So that is today's episode, Tracking Mental Metrics. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, love mail, or hate mail, you can email them to alex@alexepstein.com. No responses promised, but I do read them and appreciate them. Also, if you want to share any comments, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Human Flourishing Project. And to get updates about when the shows come out, you can subscribe to the mailing list at humanflourishingproject.com. Probably I will not have an episode next week, but if not, I will definitely have one the week after that. I'm going to be working more on my own mental metrics and other metrics. I hope you work on some too and share your results. When I come back, I'll probably be 39 years old. 38 was definitely the best year of my life, and no small part of it was having this show to share my ideas about human flourishing and also to learn from listeners, and also just that really functioned as a device for me to apply them better and for me to develop them better. So thanks all of you for sharing in this journey with me. I am very confident 39 will be the best ever, and then hopefully I can keep improving after that. And I hope that for many of you, the last year was improved by listening to this show. Okay, that's it for today. I will talk to you soon. Until then, I'm Alex Epstein. This has been the Human Flourishing Project.